Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to add images to your web pages using the image tag. Um, so to start with, I've got a web page here, web page template, and I've got the body section here of my web page where I'm going to put my image. So I can start by using the image tag, and then I can use the src or source attribute and then equal sign. And inside quotation marks, I need to specify the location of the image that I want to include in my web page. So the actual file name, and if it's in another folder, then I also need to specify that folder or directory. Now, in my folder here, I've got index.html, which is the page I'm currently working on. And then I've got this image here, which is a PNG file. So in your web pages, you can include PNG images or JPEG or GIF images and other types of graphics files. But my image here is batman.png because it's a PNG image, and it's a 800 by 800 pixel size image. So I know the file name is batman.png and it's in the same folder as the page I'm currently working on, so I can just put batman.png. Now I could just simply end that image tag here, so I could simply do that and save the file and then test it in Chrome, and that would show the whole complete image there. So it's actually pretty big. Alright, so I could do that, but there are a few other things that I really should do. The first thing that I should do is I should use the alt attribute, which basically will display some text if the image for some reason cannot be loaded. So I could just put Batman here, and basically if I go back and show that page again, the image is there, so the image is able to be loaded, so it will still show. But if for some reason the image cannot be loaded, so if the file was deleted or if the file was spelt incorrectly, so I could maybe just change the spelling of this and refresh the page, then the image won't load, but it will display that text there instead. Okay, so it is good to use some alt text there using the alt attribute in your image. So I'm going to fix that image back up, spell that correctly so it should load properly, and I'm going to leave the alternative text there in case for some reason the image can't load. But I'm also going to specify the width and the height of this image. So I can add a width attribute, say width equals 800, and I can also add the height attribute, so I can say height equals 100. Okay, and go back and refresh the page, and whoops, sorry, I meant to say height equals 800, not 100. There we go. Okay, so I've spelt the image correctly, so it's loading again, and I've also specified the width and the height. Now, if I change this image again, so I spell it incorrectly, and refresh it, it will display the text there, the alt text, but it's also, because I've specified the width and the height, it's also set aside that room here for the image. So even though it couldn't be loaded, the room has been set aside for the image. So I do recommend always specifying the width and the height of your image so that if for some reason the image doesn't load, either the file can't be loaded because it's lost or it's been deleted or it's been spelt incorrectly, if you still specify the width and the height that that image would have been, then it won't mess up the display of the rest of the content in your page. If you don't specify the width and the height though, it will not be able to load the image and it won't set aside the room that should have been set aside for the image. So it will potentially mess up the rest of the content and the way it displays on your web page. So it's good practice to always specify the width and the height. The other thing is, if we look at this image, so I'll spell it correctly so it will load again. If we look at that image, it's pretty big. So I want to make it about half the size. So I can do that by changing the width and the height there to 400 by 400 pixels instead. And if I refresh the page, it's made that image half the size, so it fits in the page much better than before. Okay, so it's important, a few things I'll just go over. It's important to use Alt in case the image can't be loaded. It's important to specify the width and the height so the correct space is set aside even if the image can't be loaded, so it doesn't mess up the rest of the page. But I also recommend making the image the correct size in the first place, basically to reduce the time it takes to download images. So this image was 800 by 800 pixels, but for my web page, I only want it to be 400 by 400 in width and height. So if that's the case, then I really should edit my image in a program like Photoshop to reduce the size to 400 by 400 pixels there, so that the image will be smaller, it will be a smaller file size, and it will reduce the amount of time it takes to download the images for your users. You could have very large images that are maybe 2000 by 2000 pixels, but you might only want them to display at 500 by 500 pixels. Well, if that's the case, it will take up the user's time and their bandwidth downloading that image when really the web page is only displaying it as a small size anyway. So it's always good to make the image the correct size in the first place so that it doesn't take so long to download the image. Okay, that is basically how to include an image in your web page. It is also important to take note of the file name. So to use the correct file name, remember it's case sensitive. So if I put in a capital B there, it wouldn't be able to load the image because the image in this folder is using a lowercase b. So I need to make sure I name it correctly. Also, if I move this image to another folder, then I also need to specify the full directory or file path here. So I need to say which folder it's in so that the image will load correctly. Okay? So always make sure you're specifying the correct file path, including any folders, the correct file extension, so in this case .png. Make sure you use alt text and you specify the width and the height. Okay, thanks for watching.